What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. We've tried to put Bill Belichick in a lot of places, right? Eagles, the Cowboys, main those two. I think the Cowboys is going to be off limits. I would expect Mike McCarthy to be their coach moving forward. And the Eagles, like, time will tell. I do think if we're sleeping on a team, because the Jacksonville Jags, who have gone 9-8 these last 2 years and look headed toward that at best, I do think that Doug, who is a great guy, is in trouble because their owner said, this is the best team we've ever had. This is the best team we've ever had. And I think there is tangible pressure on this operation, Doug and Trent Baalke. Anything less than making the playoffs is a disaster. And think about this week. If you lose to the Browns, like losing last week, it was an atrocious loss. It was. Props to the Dolphins for finding a way and creating a fumble and getting a stop when the guy's pinned on his own 30-yard line and going for it. But you lose to the Browns, like, you could argue, like, is that a fireable offense? I do wonder when you think about Belichick that, like, the Giants make sense in theory. Coach there back in the 80s, pretty legendary coordinator. His game plan is in the Hall of Fame because of the beating Montanas and the K-gun offense with Buffalo, like, legendary game planner working for Purcell's. And Northeast guy would fit right in. The New York media would eat him up. But why would he go there? They have nothing going for themselves. Even if they have the number 1 overall pick. We just saw Caleb Williams. There's not a quarterback in this draft that will have as much hype as Caleb Williams. And it shows you how difficult it is. You have to wonder if Trevor Lawrence just looks solid this year and salvageable. Bill and his guy Josh go, let's go to Jacksonville. No state income tax. The AFC, not as good as the NFC. Now that division is difficult. Houston's not going away. Obviously, Indy's really good. But I think that's a team that we should be keeping an eye on. Belichick and the Jags. Just a couple years ago, Khan tried to make a huge splash hiring Urban Meyer. Obviously blew up in his face, but he's tried. And then he goes with a little less sexy pick. I know Doug's won a Super Bowl, but if this doesn't work out, you have to imagine he'd pivot hard and be very, very interested in Bill Belichick. And you'd have to wonder if there'd be some mutual interest back. I want to do this every Wednesday moving forward. I'm going to ask myself 5 questions. We're going to call this Wednesdays on Campus. I can't imagine being a student. Any students listening to this, props to you. I don't know how much money you would have to pay me to sit into a class and listen to a professor, but somehow we all kind of attempt to get through it in our youth. So those of you that are doing it, keep doing it, because that piece of paper, while is kind of worthless, also not kind of worthless. I'm pro school because it keeps your options open, even though I thought it was pretty stupid and still kind of do. So I'm torn, but I love college football. And so every Wednesday, I'll just ask myself 5 questions. Might even expand. I got a couple ideas with this that we'll see how this goes. And I'll just answer. So I'll answer myself. We might get a guy to ask me questions. I got an idea up my sleeve, but this is the first iteration of Wednesdays on Campus. We'll start with 1. Is USC the second best team in the Big Ten? Can you imagine someone like myself who thought that Lincoln Riley and USC was destined to break up? Not because I thought Lincoln sucked. I just thought it was a weird mix. I didn't see the fit. I was like, I don't know if he knows how to hire defensive coordinators. And 2 weeks later, I go, I don't know if they're the second best team, because I think if they played on a neutral field right now against Penn State, I'd be interested to see how Miller Moss would look against that defense. Now, Drew Aller is still a bit of a question mark. They were just, Bowling Green was giving them all they could handle. I was watching that game at the gym on Saturday morning. But it's clearly not Oregon right now. Michigan has a ton of issues. I think USC looks like a playoff team. I said this to Colin the other day. Obviously, that LSU win was one of the biggest of Lincoln's career. But I thought the next week against Utah State, and I get it, Utah State, who knows? I mean, are they even a 6-6 team? USC dismantled them like a top team does playing a Mountain West team. They eviscerated them. They look like we're back. Not like Pete Carroll in his heyday back, but like we're a real team. And I went from the LSU game thinking when I thought USC was going to lose, I'm like, I still think they could get 8-4. Then to a week later, looking at their schedule, going, could they get to 10? And if they get to 10, they're a playoff team. So when the dust settles, are they the second best team? I would still hesitate. Like Miller Moss has blown me away. He's been excellent. He's like almost 75% completion percentage. But I think as of right now, they're a playoff team. They're better. Let's ask the next question. What the hell is wrong with Oregon? I've thought about this a lot. I think sometimes, like Georgia's won national championships, right? Ohio State has been a national champion contender, like legit, for, I don't know, 12, 15 straight years. Oregon has not beat Washington in 2 years. Kalen DeBoer beat him 3 straight times. So they have been in some big games and they've lost them all. Like we saw them against Washington as a 9-point favorite in the Pac 12 championship game against Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, who's now Seattle's offensive coordinator. And they got fucking worked. I don't know. Remember the final score? That game was not close. Now, everyone thought this team was better than that version last year, and I bought into the hype too. You're watching this team. Obviously, their offensive line play has been not good, but all I've heard forever is like how well they've recruited, how well they've recruited. When you play, I'll never forget Leonard Fournette, like his last year at LSU, and going into the Alabama game, it was like he's going to go off against Alabama. It was obviously LSU Alabama most years a massive game. And I'll never forget watching that game and thinking, I don't think Leonard Fournette can gain 5 yards. And Alabama treated him like he was me. And that's what good teams do against a team that is very dependent on one great player. Well, Boise State has clearly one of the best running backs in college football, who is going to, I've kind of compared him to Darren Sproles because he's short and probably end up being a second, top 50 pick, depending on what he runs or whatever. But he's an NFL player. That's a type game if you're a national championship contender, even if your offensive line has issues. And let's face it, Dylan Gabriel's not as good as Bo Nix. So you downgrade at quarterback, even if Dylan Gabriel is a good player, like Bo Nix top 15 pick starting in the NFL. Dylan Gabriel's not going to be a top 15 pick. He's not going to be starting in the NFL. So that's what you call a downgrade. You do not let the guy, listen, he's going to get his. You don't let him go for almost 200 yards at home if you're a national championship team. Now, maybe it can change. Maybe you can get better. Dan Lanny's a defensive guy. But right now, it ain't even close. It ain't even close. To let him go for 192 against you is embarrassing, even if he's an excellent player. One thing to get 80 on you over the course of the game, but 192, 3 touchdowns, 70-yard run. I can't take you that seriously right now relative to the way we talked about you coming into the year, which was like Final Four bust. Could, if it all goes well, national championship. They don't even look remotely close to that right now. Who would have thought 2 weeks in USC would be way better? If they played right now, how would you not bet on USC to win that game the way Oregon's playing? Are we tired of Colorado yet? It's hard for me to say yes because I was glued week 1 against North Dakota State and I was glued Saturday night against Nebraska. So like I enjoy watching these games and I'm not necessarily rooting for or against them. Like I just kind of want to see what happens. Now, here's what I will say, because I saw this clip of Russillo talking on his podcast, listing off the stats. I mean, he's 2-9 in his last 11 games. It's ugly. And they got worked Saturday night in Lincoln, Nebraska. Dion clearly loves like NFL guys on his staff, which I have no problem like hiring Warren Sapp to coach my defensive lineman. That's not what I'm talking. Pat Shurmur, that's a fucking embarrassing hire. In that game against Nebraska, and it's been like this since Dion has been there, they can't block anybody. Yet every single time that they broke the huddle. They're going 4 and 5 wide. It's like, hey guys, Dion, one thing I admire, like my parents were huge supporters of me, but there were levels and there was a cutoff point. Like the way Dion is with Shador, like I don't think you could pay my dad $10 million to get to that level. You know, there had to be some humility in there. I think Dion looks at Shador like Shador is better than Dion, which again, he's pretty talented. But they're going 4 and 5 wide. Like Dion's been around football long enough. I know he's not the guy calling the plays, but like, hey, Pat, you want to throw in an extra offensive lineman or a tight end and maybe not spread this thing out when we can't block a soul? It was terrible football. It was just like, listen, it's one thing to lose. Nebraska's better than you. Okay. But to just like, we're going to do this over and over. Can you imagine what some of the Nebraska coaching staff, what was Matt Rule thinking? Like, are they really just going to make it this easy? They can't block our guys. 4 on 5, it's advantage us. What would you do? Would you keep just spreading it out? It wasn't 50-10. At one point in time, it was like 21-0. Like you're not, this is college football. Things can change pretty quick. To me, they're just poorly coached on offense. There were a few, and maybe it's Dion because he wants to get Shador all these points. Like the point of this whole thing is to win. Shador's going to the NFL, whether he throws for 100 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns. He can move. He's got a big arm. Like Josh Allen didn't do shit in college and went 7th. Are you trying to win the game or are we trying to do something else? It doesn't quite add up to me. It just, that was bad. Like to me, out of the 2 years, that was one of the most glaring. And if they lose this week to Colorado State, I will say I'm out. Like I'm not paying attention to them anymore because it just, none of it matters. Because if they lose this week, which remember they almost lost last year to Colorado State at home, they're headed for 3 or 4 wins. They win this week, maybe they can get some stuff together and compete to be 6-6. This week, 0 chance at 500. Is Texas back? There are several teams that I just kind of root against. I would say Ohio State, Notre Dame, I would say pretty consistently. And Texas would be one also. Again, no malicious. It's not like I hate these programs. When they're good, I do enjoy watching them, but I like it when they lose. And Texas has always been a program like I enjoyed when they were really down. They don't determine my happiness or whatever. And even against Michigan, I was kind of hoping that, hey, maybe Michigan mucks up this game. By about 4 series in, my takeaway was, one, separate from my Texas agenda, I just kind of thought Quinn Ewers was a lot of hype last year. I remember watching games going, wait, people are talking about this guy like a top 10 pick. The guy I'm watching this year looks fantastic. That game he just played against Michigan, threw 3 touchdowns, but avoiding the rush, stepping up in the pocket, keeping plays alive, his arm strength, how quick he is to make a decision, how fast he is to kind of keep a play alive, but keep his eyes up. He was, I guess I'm sold because I watched that. Obviously, their team has one of the best squads money can buy. I think Texas is a legitimate national championship contender, and I think they're back. And in this modern day, when you pay to play and you have the most money, you're going to have a shot, right? When you can pay to play, Google, Apple, Texas, right? I mean, you're going to win. When you have the most money in a market like this, where the most money counts for a lot, it's impossible to suck. And I've been very critical of Sark. And I do wonder, like, when it really gets tough in a game against Georgia, in a game against even Alabama, I know they look shitty, but a game like that in the 2nd or 3rd round of the playoffs, are they tough enough? I don't know. Time will tell. We're going to see it this year because they're in the SEC. But that was a win. Like, yeah, we can win the Natty. Last year, that win against Alabama was impressive, but their defense sucked. Their defense doesn't look like it sucks this year. Here's the question. Notre Dame? Question mark. In what world? This is the stupid part about the top 25. Because Notre Dame was a highly touted program coming into this year. they can only fall so far after, I don't know, losing at home as a 30-point favorite? In what world, if we're going to rank the top 25, I play you, we're both 1-0. It's the second game of the season. I play you at your place, and I beat you, and you're ranked ahead of me. How does that make any sense? Just because I'm a program that no one talks about and not a program that anyone thinks about when they say the words top 25. But we played it on the field. I played you and I beat you. That's the whole point of this sport. We played 4 quarters worth of football in front of 70,000 people. And when the score ended, or when the clock went to double zeros, we had more points than you. How is Northern Illinois not ranked ahead of Notre Dame? In what world can you lose to Northern Illinois, I'd argue, and still be a top 25 team? I got no problem putting Northern Illinois in there. Notre Dame can't be there. And they definitely can't be ahead of Notre Dame on the rankings. And Riley Leonard, I read a long athletic article on him, how it was hard, it was weird because in spring he was injured and he couldn't practice. He's trying to take this leadership role, and he brought the boys home, and he seems like a great kid. Seems like a dude that you'd want to be in your life as a friend, as a neighbor, as a business partner. He can't throw. So when you pay all this money, Saban said this a couple weeks ago on College Game Day. You can have all the money in the world. You better not pay the wrong guys. And they paid a guy, high character guy, big guy, can run. He can't throw. And Notre Dame in 2024 is not going to have, Jerry Jeudy and Jamison Williams at wide receiver. Their receivers are always, maybe they hit on one, but it's going to be rare they have some of the best wide receivers in the country. Maybe get a tight end and a solid running back. But their offensive personnel is always going to be relative to the Ohio States, the Bamas, the LSUs, the Georgias, Ole Misses, Texas, is not going to be on their level. Because even with NIL, there are academic requirements. It's just a fact of life. So you better have a quarterback who can complete passes and be pretty accurate. And this guy is not. So I get falling in love with him. Once you meet him, he's probably just like, God, we love. You got to make plays on the field, and he can't pass. He can't pass. And I wanted to root for him, but as a buddy 2 weeks ago said when they were playing Texas A&M, we were texting about the game, and he's a high-ranking official for a big-time NFL team. He said these are the 2 most overhyped quarterbacks in the country, and it ain't close. Because the hype on those 2 guys, but specifically Riley Leonard, because of going to Notre Dame, is the old. Even the Jets, no one, and I mean no one, gets more hype than Notre Dame. Nobody. And nobody consistently doesn't live up to it. Like after a while, we're just like, yeah, USC's not that good. Like they didn't even get hype. Hell, this year they had no hype. Top 25. How are they still in the top? How could you walk into the office if you're Thomas Hammock, the Northern Illinois coach, and go, wait, our number, we're ranked below Notre Dame. How's that possible? We literally just played them. Now, I understand going into week 3, it doesn't determine anything. But still, like, how can I take a top 25 list seriously, and they all have it, if that's the case? And the reality is you can't. Wednesday's on campus.